So good evening, everyone, and welcome to another seminar. This is the 23rd that I've done. So we're coming up on 2 years worth of them, doing them once a month on a regular basis. I must say I really enjoy and look forward to each month's get together, the presentation that I give, and then particularly the group clearing experience that we share. That's always gone very nicely, and I feel like a lot is taking place. I realize that it is not always the case that people actually experience a big shift or transformation in themselves, but I can tell by tuning in energetically that things are changing, and that brings about life changes. This particular topic, spiritual bypassing, what can I say? It appears to have been a little less popular, and I don't know whether it's because of conflicting schedules, the weather, or that people are concerned that if we start talking about spiritual bypassing, that they will recognize ways in which they are doing that and perhaps feel a little unfulfilled in that area. So anyway, I will try to keep this very non-threatening and let each person just take the experience as they will. I think spiritual bypassing is something that all of us do to some degree. I think it's almost inevitable, particularly obviously among people who are spiritual seekers. But I think that applies to just about everybody in their life. And that's because when we talk about spiritual bypassing, we're really talking about sidestepping life's issues and trying to find a place where we are once again safe and secure, and that we don't have to experience any stress. I'm going to read you just a paragraph from the blog post that I did on spiritual bypassing. You can find it on the partnershipforwellbeing.com website under blog. It's an old one. It was back in November last year. So I think when you see the page, you have to go to the archive. It'll have the months listed. You can go to the month November. And I believe I also had the link for that in the email invitations that I sent out. So you could find the link there also. In his book called Spiritual Bypassing by Robert Augustus Masters, he describes spiritual bypassing as the use of spiritual beliefs to avoid dealing with painful feelings, unresolved wounds, and developmental needs. The spiritual needs of any tradition, whether Christian commandments or Buddhist precepts, can provide easy justification for practitioners, believers, to duck uncomfortable feelings in favor of more seemingly enlightened activity. When split off from fundamental psychological needs, such actions often do much more harm than good. Now, I'm going to start with a kind of humorous example of spiritual bypassing. It's written by someone named Jeff Brown, but I actually know who that person is. And Mr. Brown says, next time you have a terrible thing happen to you and someone says, quote, you choose your every experience, end quote, knock them unconscious. He puts a little smile mark. When they come to, ask them to thank you for fulfilling their dream, and then insist that they forgive you before they have even healed their head wound. Then tell them that pain is an illusion. Just be aware of it, witness it, and you will come into the power of now. Then remind them that there are no victims and that they just need to turn around their story of victimhood. When they try to get up, push them back down on the ground and remind them that everything you see and experience is a reflection of you. That is, you must have some issues that you needed to look at around violence. I gave you a gift. Be grateful, he says. Ask them for some money in exchange. Tell them to give you their PIN number. When they begin to get angry, remind them that anger and judgments are substandard emotions and that there is never anyone to blame. If this doesn't soften their edges, inform them that the ego is the enemy, that the part of them that is perceiving this situation as unacceptable is merely misidentified. Quote, "You are trapped in the matrix and seeing the world through that limited lens," end quote. Tell them you are here to liberate them and then steal their wallet so they can learn another valuable lesson about attachment and manifestation. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Sarcasm is sometimes a very humorous way of making a point. And I think he actually makes a whole bunch of points, but he gives a wonderful definition of different by example, of different circumstances of spiritual bypassing. But basically, it's any situation where we decide to withdraw in order to find a happier or safer place. And he used in his story there a number of expressions that we often hear. Life is bliss is one that we hear around here a great deal. And, you know, some of those other things. I gave you a gift. I love that one. Pain is an illusion. Just be aware of it, witness it, and you will come into the power of now. These things are not untrue, of course. But the point is that when we persistently hide, and it can be around just one issue or it can be around many issues. And I have known some people, even in our community here in Fairfield, who basically hide from all of life's experiences. They really do very, very little. And they just find it easy to just withdraw. They often have very few friends, don't converse very much with people, meditate a lot, and do not even look at issues like politics or other things that might be upsetting or we might call conflict. So the point of all of this is to begin to recognize how, in what ways you may be avoiding life's issues and not dealing with them. And hopefully they don't need to be as dramatic as somebody knocking you over the head. But nature has a way of doing that, doesn't it? Nature has a way of making you confront certain kinds of things. And this is part of the process of karma, the karma of learning lessons and of testing faith. And if you avoid those things, nature seems to come back and do it again and do it again. And so it may be that you go through a series of relationships, you go through a series of financial reversals, or of things in other health is another typical area in which one thing will happen and you'll kind of deal with it, you'll get by, and then sometime in the future it comes up again, or a similar health crisis comes up. Now, I put in my blog post a story which I thought was a very interesting twist on spiritual bypassing. One of my clients had faced a diagnosis of cancer and had to undergo some treatment, and I was helping with that. And then after a period of time, they were pronounced cancer-free. And that brought an immediate, sense of relief and joy, and they were very happy. Now, the story of this was that facing a diagnosis of cancer, they had looked very deeply into the possibility of dying. And for most people, when they get cancer, this is a very real thing. It really makes you confront your mortality, and you have to deal with that aspect of it. Not only just deal with the cancer itself, with having a disease, but you begin to question, well, what is my mortality? What does it mean to die? And usually there's a lot of fear associated with that, and people have to deal with that kind of stuff. The way my client had done that is he had welcomed it. He had actually embraced the possibility of dying. And he had felt that if he died, then he would get to go be with the great spiritual masters. And that would make him very happy. And it would actually be a much better situation than being alive. And so he was all ready to die. And then he went to the doctor for his checkup after some treatment, and he was cancer-free. And as I said, so there was a couple of days of great excitement, and then all of a sudden, all kinds of physical symptoms showed up. And he became exquisitely uncomfortable, and fortunately came to see me, and we got to work on that a bit. But what happened was that he realized that he wasn't going to get his wonderful wish of sitting with the great spiritual masters for a very long period of time, or forever, or however that works. He had to go on living, and he had to go on dealing with his human body and his human emotions. He had to deal with life, and that was a prospect that actually made him quite uncomfortable. So that was a nice twist on spiritual bypassing, that instead of facing the real issue of life and death and dealing with pain and, having to go through treatment and so on and so forth, and the uncertainty of the outcome, had averted that by going, oh no, I'll just let it take me. I mean, he did do treatment, but basically it was, I'll let it take me, and then I'll be in an even better place. So we can see there that there was that special kind of bypassing of actually really dealing with the situation and coming to grips with it. That is, in some sense, a rather dramatic example of spiritual bypassing. For most of us, the examples are more like in that very humorous piece that I hope you found that humorous. It was a little rough, wasn't it? But basically a humorous piece that I read at the beginning, that, it's things come up and we go, no, it's all an illusion. It's all Maya is the word we use in our community here. It's all just Maya. It's not real. I don't have to deal with it. My goal is to just remain filled with bliss, and then everything will be okay. And sometimes things do get better. And sometimes, as I said before, they come back around to haunt us yet again, so that we actually come to grips with and deal with the lesson that this situation is presenting us and move on. Now, I've also know some wonderful folks here in the community who deal with some really difficult lessons in the area of health. And it can be very challenging, and I take inspiration from them that they are able to deal with their very challenging condition or situation, health situation, and carry on with a smile on their face much of the time, and even a very, very good sense of humor. I do find that very inspiring. And when people have a chronic health condition, or they're physically disabled in some way, they have daily challenges. Life is not as easy as it is for most of us in terms of just getting on with day to day, taking care of all the needs that have to be met, and it's a wonder. It really is a wonder that they can maintain some measure of happiness and a sense of humor in the face of a situation where they have to put out most of their energy just staying alive and taking care of themselves. And often, many of them require help. Many of the people I know have required physical help from other individuals and have to adapt to a situation where they accept the dependency they have on others. Now, most of us regard ourselves as very independent. We can take care of ourselves. We can shop for groceries. We can cook our food. We can take care of our laundry and do all the other activities of life, hold down a job perhaps, and do many other things. And so we feel very independent. And any of you who's ever had a serious illness or been in the hospital and have needed things from others can appreciate that one of the lessons you learn when you have an injury or an illness is that you have to give up some of your you have given up some of your independence. It was taken away from you, and you have to accept the assistance of others, and you may even have to be willing to ask others for assistance. And that, for many people, that can be very, very difficult. So illnesses can present us with that kind of a challenge. A response in the order of spiritual bypassing might be that, even though I'm greatly challenged, I can be okay. I'll just take care of myself. I'll just do without many of the things that might make my life easier or more comfortable that would require the help or assistance of other people. So in any situation, my point is, in any situation, there is the opportunity to avoid dealing with the situation and just accept less or just hide out. And in our community, of course, one of the most popular ways of hiding out is to spend many, many hours a day on a meditation program. And nothing wrong with spending many hours a day on a meditation program, excellent for evolution. But if one is avoiding contact with one's life, if one is simply ducking issues and challenges that are coming up, those lessons may return to haunt us unless we just meditate and meditate and meditate. And that's not a bad thing to do, but it may mean that we don't learn those lessons when nature says, here it is, here's your opportunity. And of course, in our very funny one, he says, I'm going to help somebody's evolution. I'll hit them over the head. And then when they wake up, I'm going to tell them I did it for the revolution. So we make fun of that. But these things do come up and can be very, very challenging for us. So that's pretty much what I have to say about that. It's a wonderful thing. I wonder if there's any questions or comments from the people in the room or the people online. People online, if you type in the chat function there, then I can see your questions. They will show up in front of me. Anybody in the room have anything they want to ask or add or comment? Mood making. Thank you, George. Yes. We in our community use that word, mood making. Right. And mood making, yeah, it makes it a little easier, but it can also be a way of avoiding actually dealing with things. Did you have okay. Anyone else? Anybody online? I'm not seeing any responses. In which case, I must have done a really good job of presenting all of that. So that being the case, then I think we'll move on to the group clearing part of our program here. And I invite everyone, as always. I'm going to actually move myself out of the direct line of the camera while we do this, so you'll just be seeing the poster behind. The poster, by the way, is a picture of the magnolia tree in front of the Maharshi School campus when in full bloom. So I'm going to just move over here. Pardon me. No, I'm stay right here. See, I'm connected to the to the computer, my microphone here. Yes, a question. Mm-hmm. How do we include them in this? Draw attention on them? Oh, the question is a very good one. Thank you. And that is that if we know someone who's having a health challenge, how can we help them during this session? And yes, the answer is the one you gave, which is just you don't have to keep attention on them, but just have the notion that their health is meaningful to you, and you'd like to be of some help, and then just allow whatever comes in the course of the session to come. It's very important that we don't hold specific expectations while we go through the group clearing session. We just want to let that experience unfold as it will. So we just sit easily and see what comes. So I'm going to just do one little technical thing here for a moment. Sit with me.